Welcome, everyone. We're really excited today to be having a conversation with Dr. David Nieman. He is joining us today to talk about all his research and science around how exercise fights COVID-19. So we're really pleased, Dr. Nieman, to have you join us, and thank you. For those that don't know who I am, I'm Francesca Schuler. I'm the CEO of InShape and equally passionate about fighting COVID with exercise. So to get us started, I'd love for you to introduce yourself a little bit, Dr. Nieman, what you're passionate about, how you ended up in this field of study, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so I've been a professor since the mid-1980s, and my area of research since that time has been exercise immunology. In other words, I've been looking at how exercise affects our immune systems. And so I am currently at the North Carolina Research Campus. I am the director of the Human Performance Lab at the North Carolina Research Campus for Appalachian State University. And at the North Carolina Research Campus, there are 8 universities all working together in the area of lifestyle, nutrition, exercise, and human health. And we try to use some of the new cutting edge technologies to study this in a new human biology systems approach, trying to gain a better view of the whole body during exercise and nutritional interventions.
So you shared when we chatted in the past a little bit about how you started out, what really prompted you to study this. It's a very personal experience, I believe, because you're a big athlete yourself. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about your early findings that prompted you to go down this path.
Yeah, so I was an acrobatic gymnast early in my career, and then I switched over to marathon running, which was quite a switch. And at that time, this was now in the 1970s, 1980s, marathon running, it was in a big running boom at that time. And we thought that running marathons was a healthy thing to do. And so I jumped right in, and I trained really hard and got my marathon personal record down to 2 hours and 37 minutes. It took me 10 years of hard training to get to that 6 minute per mile pace. Wow. But along the way, I noticed that in myself, I wasn't feeling energetic or healthy all the time. Friends and students that I ran with were getting sick after races. And it just didn't seem to add up to me. How could it be that you spend a lot of time running? Why is it leading to what appears to be cases of illness? So that got me interested in how the immune system responds to exercise. And I teamed up with an immunologist in California back in the mid-1980s. And we have published now over 300 papers in this area.
Well, that's great. I love that you had a personal passion and that led to your work passion. That's what we all try to find, where you can fuse those together is really where we often do our best work. You mentioned exercise immunology, and not sure everyone knows exactly what that means. So if you had a second and could just give us a layperson definition of that, I think it would be great.
Right. So our immune system has many different types of cells in it. It's quite complex. In fact, there were many times in my career when I thought, maybe I'll do something different. But I persisted, and it's been very rewarding, but it's a complex system. But the good news is that the immune system is very responsive to exercise. And in fact, if you engage in moderate exercise, different types of immune cells are stimulated into greater circulation through the body and greater activity. And then we study that. And that's exercise immunology, is how it responds to exercise. And we have an international society We have researchers around the world. We meet every 2 years to review the latest data in this area.
What's exciting and what was really interesting to me as I've been learning about this and reading some of your papers is so many people think exercise is purely about how your body looks on the outside, bigger muscles, better weight management, but really it has as big or bigger impact on what happens inside your body. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But we're going to talk a little bit today about the compelling link between physical activity and our body's immune system. And you have some great slides that help those of us that are not scientists understand it, and look forward to diving right in.
So because the world is kind of shifting towards this more overweight, obese, inactive, and older society, unfortunately, there's going to be more and more of these pandemics. And the reason is the virus can jump easier from person to person because their immune defenses are down due to obesity and being unfit. And so we really, really need to turn this around. And then we became a leaner, fitter society. The virus would not be able to jump around as easily, and these would not be such a big thing.
So you have this thing called the exercise work-load continuum, and as to your opening, you've studied overtraining, as you call it, but also sort of the moderate exercise in the middle. Do you want to share a little bit about what this means and how we should think about it, and really define what you mean by moderate exercise and how you use that in your research?
Right. So, what's wrong with the majority of people in the world right now is they don't get enough exercise. And so they tend to be inactive, and then people are getting heavier and viral defenses down. The good news is that the physical activity guidelines for Americans put all the data together on heart disease and cancer and diabetes, chronic disease, infectious disease, and came up with 150 to 300 minutes a week. That's 30 to 60 minutes on most days of the week. That amount of activity is consistent with overall health. And the good news is the immune system also finds that to be the best amount of exercise. We're talking here whole body, continuous activity, and you can break that up and play sports. And all of that is very consistent with viral defense that's enhanced and reduced illness and better immune function. As you start getting usually over 90 minutes of like high intensity running, if you just ran fast, like a marathon race pace, your glycogen stores are starting to get very low, and then stress hormones go up, oxidative stress goes up, inflammation goes up, and the net effect is the immune system reflects that stress, and it doesn't function as well for hours afterwards. We have some new data that can be for days afterwards, and viral defense is down, and then people tend to get sick. So the good news for most people, and I tell my students really that we're lucky. We're lucky that 30 to 60 minutes is okay, that's enough. Just imagine if we had to spend 4 hours a day exercising to be healthy. So we can go about our general activities and try to put in 30, 60 minutes, and that's enough for good immune health.
So sometimes people think overtraining really is about level of exertion or doing strength versus cardio, but this is really about time and making sure that you spend ideally some sort of full body workout, 30 to 60 minutes, and that's where you really get the benefits.
Yes.
How does the immune system fight a virus in a very sort of layperson terms, but you had put together some a slide that I think was helpful to show how the immune system fights a virus, and just the process and what the role is of your immune system in fighting a virus or a pathogen.
So as we're talking, viruses and bacteria are trying to get into us. It's all the time we're having to defend ourselves. And they come in what we call portals of entry. A common one is through the airways and the lungs. Another portal of entry is our GI tract, if the skin barrier is broken. So those are called portals of entry. And if those pathogens get in, the first immune cells that rush to combat them are what we call innate immune cells. These are neutrophils, monocytes, natural killer cells, and macrophages. These are very strong fighters. They just do battle quickly. They can move quickly, get on the spot, and do what they need to do. But sometimes pathogens can get through. And then we have another defense system in the immune system called adaptive immunity. These are more the T cells and the B cells, and they are capable of secreting all sorts of chemicals to coordinate all of the immune cells together to finally kill off the virus. Now, as we were saying, though, if a person is an older, unfit, obese individual, these immune cells do not function very well. And that's why the virus can slip in and then cause a lot of problems, severe cases, and of course, even death.
So I'm not sure we all realize how important having a good immune system is, and how do you ensure a good one? I think that's something that often the linkage between diet and exercise and the things you can do to maintain your immune system is not something that is probably top of mind for people as it should be.
Well, as we get older, especially the T cells, which help to coordinate everything in the immune system, they don't function very well, especially in sedentary, overweight, older individuals. We did a study where we located the fittest, leanest women in their 70s that we could find, and then compared their immune systems to a group of sedentary women, their age 70s. And the immune systems of those thin, fit, elderly women was as if they were in their 40s. They had almost knocked the aging of their immune system in half. So ultimately, our immune systems do go downhill as we get very old and frail. That in our 70s, even in our 80s, our immune systems can hang in there very, very well if we simply support it with a good lifestyle. And it really boils down to being lean and fit. Another aspect that's very, very important is a healthy diet, especially a lot of fruits and vegetables. There are what we call flavonoids and polyphenols in fruits and vegetables that help support the immune system. So it's really kind of like a Mediterranean diet, rich in salads and fruits and nuts and seeds and whole grains and seafood, combined with being lean and fit. This helps the immune system do its job better. And lifestyle just has a huge impact on our immunity. The immune system relies on how we live. We can't just think it's going to do its job without support.
So how does exercise help this? And I think you have a slide on this. I sort of loved this when you were sharing this, that exercise recruits fighter cells. That sounds very exciting and something that we want more of, fighter cells. So I'd love for you to explain a little bit of what you mean by this.
So here we have a subject in one of our studies just going on a kind of a brisk walk on an elevated treadmill. That was enough to pull immune cells out of what we call peripheral lymphoid tissues. This is like your thymus, your lymph nodes, your bone marrow, your spleen. The lymph nodes, that's kind of the military bases. They're in there kind of doing their thing. But exercise pulls out the best fighters from the military bases. It's very interesting. It's the natural killer cells. It's the killer T cells, and then neutrophils and macrophages. So these very important immune cells are recruited into the bloodstream or into greater activity in the tissues. And that takes place all during exercise. And then these cells kind of keep moving around, just like the military, moving around, engaging the enemy. And then finally, we have found about 2-3 hours after exercise, everything's back to normal. And it was this study, a 45-minute brisk walk. That's all it took for this to occur. You can see that killer T cell there actually killing a cell that has a virus in it. And then you see the macrophage now engulfing pathogens. All of this is stimulated by exercise, but it is short term. And then you got to do it the next day. And as you keep doing it day after day, the summation effect is that you have better defense against viruses. And the thing about it, to me, that's so interesting. There's a few chronic effects, but more, it's the regular acute effect that really matters. And it's just the immune system just is stimulated by muscle movement and circulation moving around. They come out and then they retreat back to where they came. And you just got to keep bringing them out.
This is going to be my new favorite t-shirt. Exercise recruits fighter cells. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Got it. Great. Well, I think the visual of this helps people understand, you know, what does happen when you exercise inside your body that most of us have no idea. We're just sweating and panting probably and trying to get through it. This, I think, to me was one of the things that really I found interesting in your article that I read was how big an impact it has. We're not talking 2% or 4%. I mean, it is significantly, it's a significant difference in terms of the reduction in this particular case was upper respiratory tract infections by doing moderate exercise. I was surprised because you don't see these kind of percentages impacts that often in anything really. And so would love to hear a little bit about what this means and what the implications are for all of us.
Yeah, so we call this the J-curve relationship between exercise and respiratory infections. So most people will get 2 to 6 respiratory infections every year. We have wonderful data that if you are exercising 30-60 minutes on most days of the week, you almost knock that in half, that you will knock those number of episodes and the number of days you're sick almost in half. Whereas if you then take it too far and you overtrain, it can go the other way. It can go up. And so, people say, well, is it just a common cold? Yes, the common cold. But now there's new data that influenza is also down in physically active people. And there's a brand new study out showing that when people during the pandemic, if they were obese and unfit and not exercising, they had a 4-fold increased risk of a severe case of COVID-19. So we think that this J-curve will hold up for COVID-19. We just need more data. But it is a strong relationship, like you said. We did this one model where we threw in every sort of thing, demographics, but we also put in body weight, diet, sleep, mental stress, threw it all into a model with 1,000 people that we studied for 12 weeks during the winter and fall. And the number one lifestyle factor in reducing illness days from respiratory infections was regular physical exercise. Wow. It is the strongest thing that we can do to keep our immune defenses up, especially right now.
That's incredible. I assume this holds true for teenagers as well as adults in terms of the importance.
Yep, every age group has shown this relationship. And even if you do get ill, we have shown that the symptoms are less intense and of shorter duration.
Yeah, that's actually, and we're going to talk about COVID in a second, but I think it's one of the things that I'd really love to spend a little time on is that exercise isn't a cure. What you're trying to do is, if you get sick, to be able to weather it with a minimal amount of impact on your body.
Right. Exactly.
I thought this was a great chart. This was in an article that you recently published that showed exactly what you just said. But I mean, these numbers are, to your point, it's 50% on a series of, pneumonia as well as bacterial and viral infectious diseases. It's a big difference. Again, there's not that many things that we hear that it's like, if you do this, you can improve by 50%. I mean, that's a large number. Is there anything you want to share about this, or is this just data backing up what you just discussed?
Yeah, it was a wonderful study of nearly 100,000 people in England and Scotland, and they were followed for 9.4 years, and they looked at actual death from either a bacterial infectious disease, viral, or pneumonia. And really, to the surprise of the researchers, but also consistent with other data, the odds of getting sick and dying from a bacterial infection, viral infection, or pneumonia was down 24 to over 50%. It really is a striking result. Again, it's because the immune system needs exercise to do its job better. And it all is adding up to it's the most important thing we can be doing right now during this pandemic.
Anything you want to share as far as really viewing these as prevention strategies? I think one of the things in healthcare right now that's common discussion and an important discussion is the need to focus on prevention versus treatment. Try to get it before you get sick and have to go to the hospital or see a doctor. Really try to focus on the things that are preventative. And I think this, what you just shared and really this summary talks about the importance of prevention in this. You want to share a little bit of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I emphasize in my papers that during this pandemic, we need to stay fixated on primary prevention. It's going to be great when the vaccine is available, but it may not be fully effective. And there may be side effects. We'll see how it goes. Experts are a little worried about it. And then the drugs and therapeutics, that's like after you get sick, very sick, then you're going to need that. You don't want to get very sick in the first place. So primary prevention by staying lean, fit, eating well during this pandemic, it makes all the sense in the world because you're really keeping your defense system strong enough to cope with this virus. And this virus doesn't like a strong immune system. It really doesn't do well in people with a strong immune system.
You could just explain a little bit of kind of what is COVID in the context of what you just shared. And
yeah, so it's a coronavirus. There are now 7 known coronaviruses. 4 of them have been around a long time and cause respiratory infections every year. But they are mild. Somebody called them the good cousins of the coronavirus family. They aren't too mean or nasty or bad. But then there have been 3 new ones that have sprung up, and they're zoonotic, which means they jump from animals to humans. And we think it was a couple animal species where it mutated and then became a very novel virus that had this unique ability to spread through droplets when people talk to each other. The droplets get into your mouth or nose or eyes, and then it has a spike on it that goes into a receptor in our airways, and then it starts to multiply. And if the immune system isn't strong enough to cope with that, then it can multiply, and it wants to get down to the lungs where there's a bunch of those receptors, and then it just causes huge inflammation and damage in those severe cases. So it's just this novel virus that jumped from animals to humans, and but we now know what to do about this. I mean, we know if we keep our defense system strong, and then until we get a vaccine, wear masks whenever we can't keep 6 feet apart. The data are so compelling that we can carry on with life. We don't have to cower to this virus. It's there. We now understand it, and we can keep it at bay with simple procedures. Other than lifestyle, it's just masking and keeping apart from each other.
You boiled it down into two really relevant buckets, but can you just define, why you've put these two buckets together and just some definitions around it so people know how to think about it?
Yep. So it's all about primary preventions, things that we can all do right now as we wait for better drugs and vaccines. And in the mask, I tell people we are lucky that a mask works so well against the spread. The data are so convincing. There's no question. Every major health organization is calling for universal mask wearing. It would allow us to go to school, to work, to go to restaurants, gyms, if we would all just wear a mask and then keep 6 feet apart and avoid group activities. And those simple things combined with staying lean and fit, we could carry on.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about exercise, specifically to COVID, which you've mentioned a lot of the themes. You talked a lot about exercise clearly does matter. So you've made that point and the data backs it up, the science backs it up.
Yeah, so in general, we feel that if you're just sitting in your home and not exercising during this pandemic, it's like the military sitting in their military bases and not getting out and moving around and engaging the enemy. You're not helping the immune system engage the enemy if you're sitting around. There are some wonderful studies, many now from all parts of the world, showing that during the pandemic, people exercised less and gained weight. And that's the worst possible thing that could have been happening during the pandemic. I do believe we should have kept our trails open, beaches, and enforce, hey, nobody can congregate, you got to spread out, wear masks if you can't spread out. But if we kept everything open, gymnasiums, etc., I do believe that we would have had a leaner, fitter society, better able to cope with this virus. And not to mention the mental stress part of it. I think people really mentally been suffering from being locked up. So, however, there is a word of caution. Some people, if they get the flu or if they get COVID-19, they think that exercise can be a therapy, like a cure for the illness. They want to sweat the virus out of their body by exercising heavily while they're sick with a fever, with the flu or COVID-19. That's the worst thing you could do. So people need to understand when you're ill, just rest and get the symptoms out, and then you can slowly get back into the routine. So don't use exercise as a therapy. Use it as a preventive measure.
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about health clubs and gyms. Obviously, that is a place to exercise, depending where you are. Sharing with you earlier, I live in California. It's over 100 in most of California this week for the whole week. So not a great outdoor environment to exercise. But there's been a lot of discussion around, is it safe to go to the gym? Is it safe to go to the health club? Is it safe to go to your favorite, cycle studio? And would love your thoughts on that. How do you think about the safety and the risk and the importance of exercise? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
We know that if you're in a confined space with poor ventilation and no masks, and there's a lot of people and you're shoulder to shoulder, you're asking for it. I mean, that's crazy. But we also know, and I'm putting my glasses so I can read, the CDC is saying that gyms can move ahead if they do the following. They recommend that everybody wear a mask, be physically apart, no lengthy conversations with other people, even when you have masks on, and that the ventilation system should be improved. There should be open windows whenever possible with the weather, with fans, so that you can blow out a lot of air. Locker rooms probably should be closed. No group exercises. Plexiglass barriers. Use outdoor spaces when you can. So this is at the CDC website. They also recommend that hard to clean surfaces or equipment or supplies like resistance bands and belts probably shouldn't be shared. And then that vigorous exercise. So it's all about the mask. The mask is probably 80% of the solution here. The CDC recommended that if the exercise is going to be real vigorous, you may just want to do that outside by yourself where you don't need a mask. But this would allow gyms to be open if people just had good masks and spread apart and the equipment was cleaned and good ventilation. And I will say I've been confused as to why so many public health authorities shut down trails, shut down greenways, shut down beaches, and shut down gyms. It just did not make sense given the benefit of exercise on the immune system and mental health and health in general. And let's not make it a off-on issue, closed-open issue. Let's talk about a way of getting gyms open safely using what the CDC has listed. So
all fitness clubs have put in big investments in making sure capacity could be managed so you can distance, extensive cleaning, distancing of the equipment, team PPE. And really, we call it the 4 Ws. It's wash your hands, wear a mask, work out 6 feet apart, wipe your equipment. And it's not hard to do, you know? I mean, have you worked out in a mask?
Oh, yes, yes. I do it all the time, and it's just fine. This is the big deal. Let's get this mask thing figured out. Let's get it universal, and let's get the right kinds of masks. Some people need a little time to get used to them. But, you know, I don't know why this has to be a political statement. To me, I can go to Lowe's or Costco or whatever, wearing my mask and carry on with life and get things I need to get. Without the mask, I wouldn't dare go. And it's the same with exercise. They allow us to get out into facilities and work out. I think one reason public health officials got a little bit worried about this is because of what happened in South Korea. I'm sure you heard about those dance classes.
Yeah.
And how many people got sick from that. But come on, I mean, a dance class in a small room, everybody close and breathing deeply together. That should have been common sense that you shouldn't do that. And I think, again, if we spread out with the right kinds of masks, there should be no problem here at all.
And they weren't wearing masks in South Korea either. So they keep citing that one site, you know, and it's an interesting thing. I'm like, okay, that's a study in what not to do. It's not an indication that exercise doesn't matter. Yeah. So you would feel safe going to a gym or a health club if they followed the protocols that you read. So distancing, capacity management, everyone wearing a mask.
Yep.
And, making sure you properly wipe your equipment before and after you use it, which is a best practice anyway. That has nothing to do with COVID. That's just common courtesy.
Yes, yeah, that was being done anyways at many clubs. I'm the director of a human performance lab. So it's really like a research gym. I mean, we have cycle ergometers and treadmills and weight equipment. And so we are reopening. We were closed down in March, and now my performance lab is about to reopen with all of these cautions. And I wouldn't dare bring in a human subject into my lab to be a participant in an exercise study if I didn't think it would be a safe environment for them. As one of my fellow researchers at another university said, he thinks that if you follow all of these mitigation activities in your lab, there's a greater danger of harm in driving to the lab than in being in the lab. And I agree.
Yeah. The takeaway is exercise fights COVID. I mean, it really does.
It does. It does. And I think you and I have talked before. I'm big on benefit risk ratios. And to me, the benefit of exercise on keeping your immune system in good fighting shape for this virus, this pandemic, it is so important. The data are so compelling that if there is any perceived little bit of risk in allowing people to exercise in a gym, for example, I think the risk is so small relative to the huge benefit that if I was a public health official, there'd be no question. I do think, though, that there has to be enforcement. I think the gyms there has to be surveillance. And if a member comes in and absolutely wears the wrong kind of mask or refuses to wear the mask, they should not be allowed to work out. And I think there needs to be surveillance. And if a gym isn't following this, then they'll have to close down. And I think this is the bad part of everything, is that industries are being shut down because some are not doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like the beaches were closed down because people were congregating and officials got mad and closed them down for everybody. That wasn't needed. It's more enforcing that people spread out and don't congregate at the beaches, and then they can walk and swim and get their exercise for their immune system. It's all about rules, guidelines, and enforcement. And I think we can do that. We don't have to be black and white, off and on these issues.
So thank you so much, Dr. Nieman, for joining us today. Really insightful, impactful, and most of all, I think really highlights for all of us the importance of the immune system and how exercise can impact that. So hopefully this will encourage all of us to exercise 30 to 60 minutes a day. Would love for you to share. You shared so many takeaways around how to do it, masks, how to do it safely, how to combat COVID. If you had to leave us with one key takeaway, what would you leave us with?
Well, I'm reminded of a quote from Dr. Ken Cooper, who was called the father of aerobics. I listened to a talk he gave one time, and he said, walk your dog every day, whether you have one or not. And I thought that was great counsel. And that's really the bottom line here.
So thank you so much. Hopefully that'll get us all moving inside, outside, however we can, and look forward to a future discussion. So thank you again for your time. Really appreciate it.